And what is up, everyone? So in today's video we are going to be talking all things relating to the UCAT test. So for those of you that are unaware of what the UCAT test is all about, well then trust me, you're going to absolutely regret ever knowing. No, just before you go, now that you're here, you might as well learn about what the big hoo-ha about this test is. The UCAT is an aptitude test that most students here in the UK have to sit prior to making the application to medicine and dentistry related courses. So it's basically designed to test you under severe, intense pressure to see whether you qualify for the standards and the rigors of the intensity of these programs. So basically it tests you in 5 different areas. You have verbal reasoning, decision making, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, and situational judgment. I hope I got all of that in. Anyway, each section is scored from a range between 300 and 900, apart from the situational judgment part, which is branded or banded from 1 to 4. So all of the score is added and then you are awarded with an average score. Now, I typically tend to recommend that you should be aiming for around 650, and 700 would be a very decent score. Now, I know the medical portal tends to have scores lower than this, but trust me, I've seen applications for coming up to 5 years now, and these are the sort of scores that you want to be aiming around, so you give yourself enough maneuverability so that you don't end up with a score that's too low. And for those of you that are new to this channel, my name is Amin and I am one of the examiners based at this private exam center known as the ateamacad. And I am not a medic, but I have over 5 years of experience of preparing many aspirational medics and dentistry students alike for their applications. I also oversee the entire UCAT process as I sign off the references for application forms. But not just that, I have also personally undergone many psychometric and IQ based tests like this, and the UCAT test really is not that different. And every year we hold a summer program for the UCAT admissions test here at this center, and this year we are holding our intense sessions online, and I will be offering some of you, well actually all of you, an incentive right at the very end, so do stick around for that. First and foremost, I want you to etch this in your minds, and this test is an exam which is all about exam strategy. So no matter how good or bad you think you are, the most successful students all have a strategic plan going in. Look, at the end of the day, you want to be scoring the most number of marks, so you want to keep your composure and accept that you won't be getting all of the questions correct, and that isn't something to throw a hissy fit over, but just learn to accept that, and from there strategize how you're going to get the maximum return from it. The second thing I want you to understand is that you need to make flagging and triaging your closest ally. Remember that each question is worth 1 mark, so what you want to be doing is answering all the questions that you find the easiest first, and then deal with the more difficult questions thereafter. So you have to quickly get acquainted with being able to feel out the questions and making a judgment call of whether to go for it or not. And moving on to the third tip, and I've watched a few YouTube videos on this and I've not seen anyone mention this so far. It is so important in tests like this, guys, that you get off to a good start, as it boosts your morale and it builds momentum going forward. And without it, you'll have that eerie feeling building up in your stomach, and before you know it, you're piling up unnecessary pressure. So start off by just answering a bucket load of easy questions and getting off to a flying start. Now, to talk about each section, for the abstract reasoning, when you're practicing this section, look out for patterns, numbers, colors, the shape, and notice how the patterns are forming. If at the start when you are practicing you're struggling, then reverse engineer the process and then learn from the process. Make a note of it, and then what you realize is that you'll see these patterns repeating themselves. In the test, if you feel that you don't recognize it, then just flag it and move on. Focus on the more familiar ones first, and then leave the ones you haven't come across until the very end. Likewise, in the verbal reasoning, when it comes to this section, pay close attention to things like keywords, names, dates, capitals, and the biggest tip I can possibly offer you regarding this section is to be able to skim read efficiently. Notice I didn't just say read fast and not absorb anything in the process, but be able to skim efficiently. And this is a skill you need to already become proficient at. And for this particular test, it's so crucial, as it will not just save you the time, but also enable you to answer more questions, which is especially true when it comes to those true and false statements, as this can also be applied to that decision-making part of the test as well. I've broken out each section here and the time allocated for each section, and then the average that it breaks down per question. So you can see, like, especially when it comes to abstract reasoning, just how little time, 14 seconds is not a lot of time to try and answer the question and figure out the pattern and so on. So what I recommend for this section is, number one, you become familiar with the various patterns in your practice. Okay, so go through those questions and then make notes of the various different types of patterns. And then when you come to this question, look at what's taking place, and then by process of elimination, you can possibly work out what's taking place. If you don't recognize it within the first few seconds, flag it, move on. Now, my advice for the quantitative section is that you need to really be quick at assessing how many steps are involved in the calculation. And obviously, the less calculations, the quicker you can answer it. So if I was doing this, my strategy would be to knock out as many one-step or two-step questions and then move on to the more strenuous questions. Also, I know you have access available to the calculator, but try and limit its use, as that takes up time in the process. You should have learned all the relevant formulas and also the basic calculations. You should be able to process them very quickly in your head. Lastly, I know everybody and their mother says this, but practice, practice, and practice some more. Seriously, you won't see progress until you really commit to this. So get into a schedule of doing this, ideally a little bit each day. And as you're doing it, begin to notice your own weaknesses, or what I call your Achilles heel, and work on those. Don't just avoid it and think you don't have to face up to it. Remember, unis will be looking at the breakdown of each section. So you do want to perform well overall and not just rely on one section that you're good at to bring your average up. Now, bookings for this year began from the 1st of July and will run until the 30th of September. So get in there early to book and give yourself the maximum time to prepare for this test. And remember, you can always guess as well. So you know, if you're rushing, you have options between A and E. And in the worst case scenario, guys, just pick A all the time, as it stands for 18. And on that note, guys, I mentioned earlier that if you stick around until the very end, I will offer something of value in return. As I mentioned earlier, we've got experience doing this year in, year out, and I've outlined some beneficial resources down below, so you can go ahead and use those as well. But what I will be offering every single one of you, and you can choose to take this up or not, but I'm still going to be offering it to you. We will offer you all a 1-hour diagnostic session with us through Zoom at no cost whatsoever. So you can DM us on Instagram and make sure you've subscribed to the channel, as we will continue to keep adding valuable material like this so that you guys can benefit from it. Make sure to also give this video a thumbs up, and if there is anything else you want to ask, then drop it in the comment section down below. Well, I hope that this video has brought some value to you. My name is Amin, and I will catch up with you another time.
Look what you've done.